Dear WeGO members and partners, welcome to 2021 WeGO Chengdu East Asia Regional Office webinar, Co-Creation of Empowering Smart Cities Through Citizen Engagement. I'm Anna Kwok, Program Officer at WeGO, mainly in charge of WeGO's partnerships with Chinese cities, and I will be your host today.
Thank you very much for joining us today. First of all, I'd like to convey my special thanks to all our supportive colleagues from the WeGO Chengdu East Asia Regional Office, Madam Lily, Vice Director General of Chengdu Foreign Affairs Office, and also Dr. Avdokimos Konstantinidis, President of a European Network of Living Lab, who are both present here with us. Thank you and your teams for your persistent hard work and synergizing with our efforts to promote more resilient and healthier development of smart cities.
Today, we are very honored to have officials, experts, scholars, and the project managers from different continents to share with us both the theoretical framework of citizen-centric initiatives and the successful practices. Today, and my colleague from Chengdu will share its experience in achieving participatory governance and citizen engagement in local communities through smart apps and mini programs. Panelists will provide insights from different perspectives to help participants get a fuller view of stakeholder maps and learn to establish partnerships that produce exemplary citizen-centric resolutions. We look forward to join you to dive into the fruitful discussions and to contribute our part to the smart, sustainable development of cities around the world. Thank you.
Now, the city as a citizen drive and open innovation ecosystem, we know that cities and communities are ideal real-life large-scale testing grounds for testing digital solutions, so cities can work as urban living labs, and this is why all is involved has been invited and strongly contributes to this initiative. Cities can link to stakeholder participation and ensure that the local community is actively involved in creating solutions. One of the most important things is to find ways in the open innovation to give the ownership to the co-creators. If we co-create with citizens, that citizens have also ownership of the outcome. So it's really important to find ways on acknowledge their participation and their co-creation. And to collaborate on finding funding that goes beyond the simple city, and we have coordinated funding coming from different, from the EU level to the country level to the city level. So actions, and this is my last slide. So I'm closing. Use a commonly agreed list of standards and technical specifications to achieve interoperability of data, systems, and platforms among cities and communities. To make key enablers of city solutions like infrastructure and services available and accessible to all. Use a common marketplace to share data, digital services, and solutions among cities and communities, rather than each city to have their own marketplace and the country a different marketplace. To optimize the synergies, as I said before, to EU, national, regional, and local funds, and to help and develop a framework to measure and monitor the benefits for citizens, the public authorities, and actually all the quadruple helix stakeholders. So we can have actionable metrics. So the cities try to apply some co-creation activities and citizen engagement activities, but at the same time, they can measure the impact and pivot in order to maximize the impact for all the stakeholders.
So now we will proceed with the first session on understanding local context and identifying customized citizen-centric methods.
电影世界中呢，有大名鼎鼎的钢铁侠、蜘蛛侠，在我们新都也有我们的风行侠。那么他们是谁呢？在新都，风行侠就是以快递小哥和外卖骑手的一个响亮的称呼。他们每天行走在大街小巷，是新都市民身边最熟悉的一个陌生人。他们不是虚拟世界的一个英雄，但是却是我们现实生活中提升我们城市韧性、传递爱和温暖的一个守护使者。最后呢，就是风行侠带来的一些启示。一个呢是小群体激发了价值认同。风行侠虽然是一个很小的群体，但它成为了基层治理的一个原力量，并引发了裂变效应。我们在探索实践中呢，不断的升级理念，完善制度，以业缘、去缘、地缘为纽带，分类放大小群体的一个优势，组建类型多样、覆盖更广的社群组织和自组织，重塑治理体系，凝聚共治、共建、共享的一个价值认同。第二个呢，就是有回应，塑造参与氛围。我们坚持由点及面、地级进推，然后开发了随手拍的一个智慧化平台。这个平台开发以来呢，我们总共是接到了上报的问题24000余件，然后截至目前已经处理了22000余件，处置率达到了91.6%。
在我们的城市社区打破了原有的社区的这样一个地缘和血缘的连接，导致我们城市社区邻里关系疏离，社区公共生活匮乏。我们的社区居民之间呢互动减少，原来的那种和谐、守望相助，在城市社区如何去重现呢？其实跟我们提出了很大的挑战。那么这些活动都跟我们的线上是紧密相关的。那么我们通过我们线上向下各种各样的平台的搭建，实现我们社区居民我们叫做从散沙化的冷漠的城市社区，向一个温暖的有连接的城市社区去转化。我们的路径是居民的组织化、组织的公益化，然后通过这样的方式，以社区为基础，建立自助互助的体系和社区支持网络，来实现我们居民之间的深度的交流、连接和信任。那么在这个过程当中，互联网起到非常重要的作用。比如说刚才我提到的益昌，那么我们就是依托互联网平台来开展的一个项目。益昌起源于中国的隋唐，在中国古代发挥了非常重要的社区互助的作用。那么当代益昌，我们在一个城市的陌生社会当中去建立，那么我们就应用益昌一个小程序，就在社区里面的一个 APP 一个小程序，然后在线上实现这样资源的对接。那么我们通过线上可以了解到我们社区当中哪一些低收入人群需要什么样的帮忙，然后我们的社区居民可以根据自己的情况，每个月捐赠出一些小额的物资，包括1桶油、1袋米1包面，或者是一瓶洗发水等等。那么我们通过组织社区自组织，去把这些物资派发到我们社区的各个居民需要的居民的手里面。这个不光是一个物资的流动，它也是一种爱的流动，是一种温暖的覆盖。也包括像我们的邻里间软件，邻里间软件是专门提供给居民发起邻里活动的一个软件。那么我们的社区居民在线上发起各种各样的活动，都是可以得到积分的。比如说我的孩子，我特别希望他能够看书少玩电脑，那我就可以在这个邻里间上面发起一个活动，看看周边有没有其他的妈妈跟我有同样的想法，那么我们就一起来做一个读书会，让我们的孩子们能够多看书。当然我们也可以发起很多的这个兴趣类的活动，比如说我喜欢弹钢琴，有的人可能喜欢拉那个小提琴，那么我们有没有可能在社区当中去做一个音乐会呢？那么也可以在邻里间当中去发起。也可以，我们除了这种就是邻里之间的这种活动以外，我们也鼓励社区居民开展一些就是这个公益性的或者叫做自愿性的服务。这里面也有一部分可以有低偿的收费。比如说我有修表的技能，那我在上面也可以发一个通告。那么如果大家很难找到修表的人，那也可以在这里上面得到帮助。
today I wanted to spend my 9 minutes talking about some of the case studies and some of the ideas that we have when it comes to Living Lab, which is at the very center of our approach to smart city development in Thailand. And as Anna kindly mentioned, DEPA, which is my organization, has been at the forefront of smart city challenges here in Thailand, and of course, with the community of ASEAN members for the past few years through the work of the ASEAN Smart City Network. To summarize, there are 6 guidelines for a successful Living Lab. We want to start with the people, not the technology. People are the most important. Technology would have to fit and complement the needs and demands, the unmet needs and unmet demands of the citizens. Second of all, you want to focus on value and not optimization. You can optimize anything you want, but if the value isn't there, there's no point of optimization. And third, you want to aim for a win-win solution, not winners takes all. As I mentioned, because we can experiment now, we can actually get all the stakeholders to understand the condition by which they're about to engage, and that usually get them to better structure the positions and strategies that they might want to fit into the overall program of the new activities that are the new solution for the new challenges. And fourth, you want to open up all the access for accessible public data, because that which is usually a good foundation for innovations. And fifth, you want to operate in the agile fashions. The governments and private organizations alike have to adjust and adapt to the new mindset that a lot of things have to be experimented first, without which it wouldn't be sound to actually implement. And that agility is usually the key to successful projects. And at the end, there's nothing more important than the growth mindset, because when you have a growth mindset, you usually have better solutions to new problems. Without the growth mindset, say you have fixed mindset, you usually try to solve new problems with the existing solutions, which usually doesn't work as we know it.
We call Living Lab as living laboratories for putting the accent on the fact that co-creation should be seen as a result of the co-design approach implemented by the Living Lab as an innovation intermediary which orchestrates an ecosystem of actors in a region. And this is done thanks to the involvement of users and citizens in the whole life cycle of the approach, generating innovation, especially within smart cities, where technologies are co-developed to generate a relevant impact on the society. In fact, the idea of the Living Lab started with the co-development of technologies. Now we're working also a little bit more towards the co-development of service in terms also of social impact for the community. And one of these relevant part of the Living Labs is more about what kind of value we are producing for our society. So what kind of benefits? If you can go to the next slide, I would like to briefly explain you what is the Living Lab's integrative process developed by one of our Living Lab members, EGSSO in Switzerland. I think it's interesting because you can see here in a concrete approach, which are the different steps that should be taken by Living Labs in order to develop effective community services. So the first 2 steps are focusing on the empathize. So what is the problem space? What is happening in our urban context? Which are the stakeholders that should be involved? By following a people-public-private partnership model to integrate all the stakeholders in the process to the quadruple helix approach, which means involving citizens, academia, local government, and public and private authorities in it. Then the third step is to define uncovering barriers, trying to understand, interviewing which are the key players individually, what are the assumptions and what are the needs. Then the first step is to ideate, and together with the 5th step is the co-design plan, a common vision to be created and shared goals to enable the mashup and the co-design with the users and not for the users. So what we say that is important in the Living Labs is that the stakeholders are involved already in the day 0 of the process of any kind of a project in the approach. So they're not just coming into testing and validation, which is the next 2 phases of the solution space, prototype and tests. Of course, they are important to evaluate what the product will be, how the product will be developed, and what kind of results they will be produced in the society for implementing and scaling up, which are the next 2 final phases in the deployment space. The evaluation should facilitate the stakeholders' engagement and co-creation, and it's important that these stakeholders are engaged throughout the value process. But then we focus in the next slide in the urban Living Labs.
what are urban living labs, because we're working a lot now with smart cities, so we cannot just talk about living labs. And for us, urban living labs are early experimentation gardens, and I think this definition by Tandem Resource is quite good and is quite aligned with what we're doing. Also at INOL, opening the city as a site for experimentation. This could go from just a city working with specific companies of researchers, allowing testing in the streets, to the living labs. And they go a step further with the urban living labs, including the real co-creation process and very strongly the user and citizen engagement into the approach. And if we look at the next slide, please, what is different? For example, in our urban living labs are urban living labs that follow our principles, components and values, evaluation criteria also to be an INOL member. And for example, the value co-creation is an important factor for us. The urban living labs also follow the 5 aspects described above: co-creation, user engagement, everything that also was explained by Mr. Codantini. This would be easily decided and co-defined as INOL living labs.
After hearing from cities from different parts of the world, how they tackle these issues with ICT technology together with citizen engagement, I want to know what are some of the things that sound familiar to you and what were some of the fresh ideas. So what way do you think you can incorporate those existing methods with the fresh ideas you heard today?
From the lectures we had today, I'm very interested in the smart city from Europe, where you have this kind of application where you track down the buses and public transportation. I think it could be very useful for our semi-transportation in Thailand as well. It's stuff that we are facing nowadays, where the public transportation are quite, there's many varieties ways, and some are not very useful right now. So the problem is that we are overpopulated in transportation and traffic over the road in Thailand. So having this application might help our lower down the numbers of public transportation as well. I think it would be very useful in the future, and we might look forward to it. But furthermore, I think each kind of application should be developed to specific cities instead of using the same application for the whole country, because different cities have their different specialties and different layout of the planning cities. So for the further design, it's something that we need to include into the further development of electric and application world.
From my perspective, the common thing that we share is to give the social governance back to the society. Both Chengdu and other cities are trying to involve more social parts into the problem-solving framework. Chengdu's solution is to divide managing department into smaller units, offering citizens chances to take part into the problem finding. However, the problem-solving part is still government-centric. On the contrary, in the fresh idea from Eno and Dr. Nang, I saw a new pattern that is citizen-centric. This problem-solving framework gives more power to citizens, allowing them to extend their voice in the problem-solving process. Government instead would switch from a decision maker to a strong participant. Actually, Chengdu could find something useful in this framework. Citizens could not only point out the problem and give suggestions, they could also be the plan designer and practitioners. When problem is observed, not only government, but citizens could just set up a problem-solving group which involves relevant stakeholders. Group members work together to design, simulate, evaluate, and finally execute the problem-solving plan and benefit from it. We could notice that in this process, citizens are not only designers, but also users. Citizens just strive for themselves, which may bring out more good ideas. The main body of the decision group is citizens, and one group would just be responsible for one social problem. This new pattern aims to make sure that the solution contains ideas from different parts of the society, and it is evaluated by relevant stakeholders. I hope that this plan could be a trial on exploring citizen-centered urban governance.
First of all, I would like to offer my most sincere thanks to WeGO, Enol, and the Chengdu government for inviting me to this event. It's truly an honor. I would also like to thank the speakers of today's event for the very motivating speeches. So, the original understanding of smart cities was the IBM definition of what was being smart use of technology to improve the efficiency in large cities. It was mostly about automated processes and sensors. Later, we heard about big data and Internet of Things. Related to citizens of these smart cities, it was then focusing on how they would benefit from a better quality of life using these technologies. The challenge with smart cities was that they all felt their challenges were special to them. That is why the IBMs and Microsofts of the world were not able to take the whole smart city market overnight. Most solutions had to be custom-made for each city. In addition to improvements for the smart city-related technologies, in recent years, some important changes have happened. Social collaboration platforms have been created, and some have been made into what we call citizen engagement platforms. These platforms do also, these software platforms do not only help the municipalities to reach out to their citizens, but also empower the citizens in local communities and neighborhoods to help each other as well. It was only when the United Nations a few years ago defined what a smart city as a smart, sustainable city that politicians in Europe and Norway finally agree what a smart city is. And since the UN Smart City Program could offer KPIs and for UN Sustainable Development Goals, SDG, it was all about all of a sudden suddenly easy to have tangible goals and a benchmark to compare the needs of one smart city to another. This helped speeding up the process, the smart city development speeding up the smart city development all over the world. Here in Norway, we are focusing on making the most sustainable platform for all smart cities. One key component is data centers, and they have to become more sustainable. Most large data centers are located close to the smart cities because that is where they are close to the citizens. But the problem is that most cities do not have renewable energy sources. You normally find renewable energy production in remote areas far away from smart cities. That is why we have under development a holistic data center solution with a green core data center close to a renewable energy source and a smart city edge data centers in the city itself. In order to deal with the future demand for smart city compute and storage needs, we have to ensure that we make the IT infrastructure environmentally friendly. That is the only way we can ensure the wave we are now using to surf the internet does not turn into a tsunami.
What do you think are some of the good indicators of citizen-centric initiatives? It can either like when it comes to living labs, how do you evaluate those projects?
In our specific expertise, we have seen that the terms of indicators for citizen-centric initiatives are focused on the number of citizens involved, of course, so quantitative analysis, but also more qualitative assessment in terms of the level of interest for citizen engagement in the community partnership initiatives, and also acceptability of the solutions co-developed in the market before coming into the market, because I think it's important that they're part of the process, as I said before. And finally, also the level of citizen engagement throughout the whole process, so not just at the beginning or at the end for evaluating or testing the solution, but the most important and also most difficult thing, at least in European projects or activities in smart cities in Europe, is really to try to have these stakeholders involved throughout the value chain, the life cycle approach. And we have, of course, identified several initiatives that can help, such as gaming co-creation workshops, hackathons that not only remunerate them in terms of money, but also in terms of the value co-created together. So they're more interested to be part of the process throughout the whole life cycle.
We do have indicators to evaluate our output, but I think it is more important to focus on achieving tangible results such as sustainable impact. Projects that focus on sustainable change and long-term outcomes may not always be assessed effectively if we rely solely on quantitative measurement. Rather, we need to consider qualitative perspectives and holistic approaches.
Hi, this is Rio, and I have some questions.
Yes.
Okay,
who would you like to address your question to?
I have for Dr. Long.
Dr. Long, yes.
Yes. So, Dr. Long, as you've mentioned in your speech, we know that DPA plays a very important role in the smart city construction in Thailand. And we know that actually in Thailand, the government has proposed 7 smarts in smart city initiatives, namely smart environment, economy, mobility, energy, people, living, and governance. And my questions are, has the EPA been involved in any living lab projects related to these 7 smarts? And if so, how are the EPA's core values being put into practice while carrying out all these projects? And how are stakeholders' demands being met? And that's all my questions, and looking forward to your answers. Thank you.
Oh, hi. I guess I could give another talk on that. It seems like you're asking a very good question, excellent questions. I think the idea behind the answer to your question would be the idea behind what every city should be doing in terms of promoting smart cities. So just to give you a slice of the answer that I could give you now. One of the things that we're trying to do really hard is to put people first. So even though we believe in public-private people partnership, we put people first. So the approach that we use is called people public-private partnership. It's a naming thing, right? We want to name it too, so it will be different. But the point is, it's precisely that. We want to make sure that whatever it is that people want, maybe they don't even want, maybe don't even know that they want it yet. Maybe there are unmet needs that haven't been found. Maybe they didn't realize that they would have, that once they have it, their livelihood would be better. These are the things that we're trying to find out. I mean, as the director Jesse mentions, the qualitative understandings of people's livelihood has to be extracted, because if we only look at statistics, we will be doing the same thing over and over again, just in terms of using the traditional existing solutions for new challenges, right? Because if you, for instance, you have statistics showing that there are accidents, road accidents, you might want to build more roads, you might want to build more systems to prevent roads accidents, in the traditional ways. But if we don't look at statistics, but we look at behavior, for instance, that people are causing accident because of their inability to work 8 hours a day. So they're sleeping inside the vehicles becomes a problem, then there might be a way to use not just smart mobility, but smart economy and smart living approaches to make sure that fewer people will be sleeping when they're driving their vehicles. And that might be a way to solve problems without having to resort back to the traditional or existing solutions that we used to have in the past. And that's why we put people first. And once we understand the behavior, once we understand the underpinnings, structure, could be social, cultural, could be physical, then we go on to look at the partnerships. It's usually start with the governments, but then again, governments have so many limits, right? In terms of what they can do, the understanding of the market. The government doesn't know as much as the private sectors, but governments are good at something. They're good at trust. They're good at regulations. So how do we bring out the superpower of the governments and the private sectors to work together in order to kind of push forward the project? So what DEPA has been doing so far, to answer your question, is to be that hub in the middle, so that we not only we understand the people, but we can also match the technology and the demand of the people, as well as the ability of the governments to work seamlessly and in concert with one another in order to deliver projects that would be better for the people livability.
Is there any problems about the variety of people generations in terms of the problems? Because I have experience with my parents, for example, that they are not familiar with technologies and applications. As we are developing toward more of technology-based cities, what do you think you can having some problems or solutions for these problems?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, we worked a lot with this issue in our living labs, especially because we try to integrate everyone in the process for the inclusiveness. So especially when we are working more with elderly people in the context of health and well-being, that's a very important issue. So thanks for the question. And what we are trying to do is to, for example, if we are developing a product, we try to build them manually with some kind of cards and really pieces of things that they can understand. And then starting from that, we built the real technology afterwards. So they are involved, of course, throughout the process, and starting from the paperwork until the definition of the ICT. And of course, the problem of advanced digital skills is a problem that is very strong in smart cities, at least in Europe. A lot of smart cities in Europe don't have the necessary skills, for example, to understand how the artificial intelligence really works, how the sharing of big data really works. So that's why we're working towards that. We at ENOL building a capacity building program for digital transformation of smart cities in the EU. And Dr. Evdokimos Konstantinidis has presented this Living in You initiative. So every kind of city that is also not part of Euro who would like to be part of this capacity building program on advanced digital skills can join. And by doing so, also we are hoping to reach the citizens in the city to let them more skilled about the city. But I would say the more practical answer is really to involve them in the process of co-constructing together the solutions. I hope it answers your question. And we have some concrete examples. So if you can send me an email afterwards, I can give you also images, pictures of the processes we built together with this paperwork, starting from then to sensors to support elderly people in the homes to be giving signals to the hospitals, for example, when they are not feeling well. And they built together this solution with the Living Lab. So it's quite nice also to be seen in terms of real pictures.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we conclude, I just really want to hope that our webinar helps all of our participants to have a clearer view of what citizen-centric smart city initiatives look like and what it takes to apply them under their own local context. If your city is interested in learning more about it, all participants, please don't hesitate to contact us with WeGO. And we look forward to seeing you in future events of ours, including our annual Chengdu training program in Chengdu, hopefully next year. And thank you. Let's stay connected. Have a great rest of the day. Bye.